All right, guys. Today we're going to listen up to Zach Taylor talk about the offseason so far. He's all about OTAs, draft, that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and listen up to Coach Taylor. 1 second.
His favorite part of draft week was the post-college free agent pizza. Is that yours?
Yeah, yeah. I don't wait till post draft. Yeah, that's a good part of it. Dust to settle a little bit.
Do you ever, since we're just in icebreaker question mode here, have you ever watched a movie that Draft Day?
Who was just talking about? I think my mom was just talking about this. Yeah, I've seen it before.
What are your thoughts on how?
I saw it a long time ago. Very unrealistic, So it's like anything about your job. When it's that unrealistic, it's hard to accept. But it makes for good movies, so I understand that.
Could they make a movie out of the Bengals draft room, or would it just not be too boring?
I'd watch it.
Yeah, you watch it.
Yeah.
What are the final conversations like as you all go through and approach Thursday? I mean, at this point in the week, do you have a lot of research done? Are you just trying to see what movement might be out there? I mean, what is it like for you all as you get close to that day?
Just trying to anticipate decisions you're going to have to make. I think Duke does a great job. Mike, everybody, really just facilitating discussions that you want to have now as opposed to one pick away, 2 picks away. Just trying to anticipate.
Part of those conversations involve if player A, B, C, or maybe down to 15 is gone, possibly trading back out of the first round, acquiring an extra pick. Is that something that gets to do?
I'll let Duke answer anything about trades or anything like that. But, yeah, just comparing this player versus that player, how it fits us, I think those are big conversations right now.
There's been a lot of talk about people across the league about this particular draft class not being as a sure bet for a lot of GMs and coaches heading into this week. What are your just general thoughts on this year's draft class in particular?
I don't think anything's ever a sure bet. You just got to feel good about where you're picking and how they fit for you and what the vision is and go from there. But, whether you're picking in the top 10 or at the end of the first round, it's hard to say anything's ever a sure bet. You've always got that feeling. But again, it's just finding guys that fit us and can help us win. That's the key thing that we focus on.
Offensively, do you feel like you know your identity now more than ever? What fits prospect-wise, what doesn't? Part of that probably being continuity.
I think every year that passes, your team changes, your offense changes, your defense changes, so you continue to evolve. But, you know your roster a lot better, having been around some of these guys for a number of years now, some of them 1 or 2 years. And so you just got a better sense of maybe that what'll help you continue to play at a high level. That's what we're looking for.
Zach, are college tackles getting harder and harder to evaluate, and what do you look for to maybe project that guy can be an NFL lineman?
That's a difficult position. I think it always has been, because some guys maybe have played other spots and you're projecting them to a spot. Some of it's hard because, one of the toughest positions to play against is defensive end in this league, because that's where oftentimes you'll go into a game and maybe the other team's best player is a defensive end. And so those guys have a tough job to do. And so asking a guy, who's coming into his first year from college football to go block some of these guys is a tall task. And people quickly say whether or not they're successful or not, in their first year. And sometimes it takes some time to develop and experience. And, so we've got a collection of guys that we've drafted
Jackson Coleman.
over the years that are now in their 3rd or 4th year that we've seen continue to progress, which is exciting to see.
I feel like that was completely around Jackson Carman. No, it wasn't completely around Jackson Carman, but it was very much, if you take that, implied to what Jackson Carman has done this offseason, where he is bulked up, looked better, he looks like he is ready to go. He's in that spot now, exactly what Coach Taylor just said, where it's like his 3rd or 4th year, right, and now he's progressing a lot better. Now, the thing about the AFC North that's really difficult and challenging is that the AFC North, of course, you got Myles Garrett, you got to play twice a year. You got to play TJ Watt twice a year. The Ravens currently don't have that crazy of a pass rusher other than Oweh. But even Oweh is not easy to play twice a year. We also got some other guys. So it's like, it's a mix of, we have a very tough division. So if you're a right tackle and you get drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals here, you're going to have to come in and instantly go against really, really good defensive lines. That's never an easy task to do.
far as running back goes, what do you look for, like, in a running back, especially, kind of up there in that first top tier of running backs out there?
Well, I think there's a number of things you can look at. Whether what's his first, second down value, what's his third down value, can he protect, can he win in one-on-one matchups with linebackers, and so really you can give a description based on which guy you want to see fit into your room. Piecing together running back rooms is always interesting like that.
How do you evaluate their ability to protect, especially because some guys didn't do it?
Yeah, some guys are easier than others, and so again, just it's part of just when you interview guys, asking their protection knowledge, and that's part of what you have to gain in the scouting process. Are they capable of doing it? Just because they didn't do it on their college tape, do we think that we can project them as somebody who's able to do it? It's a hard thing to project sometimes, but that's part of the process that you have to follow.
What's the biggest key to being a good blocking running back?
Knowing who to block, yeah, being disciplined, number one, being willing, number two. No, it's harder than people realize. It's just the discipline of understanding some of the third down looks you're going to see. We spend a lot of time on all that, and so when you talk about protections, number one is, are they capable of understanding? It's not always an easy riddle to solve as you're standing there and the clock's coming down and it's loud and you can't hear, and you have to really understand the answers to the test so that the quarterback can trust you. And then number two, are you willing to do it? There's plenty of guys who have been big guys that are great pass protectors. There's plenty of guys that have been around that are small guys that are good pass protectors because they're willing to do it. They understand how to do it, how to meet the guy at the line of scrimmage before he can gain more space on you. And so again, I've seen a myriad of types of players who are good pass protectors. It doesn't all come down to size. It doesn't hurt, obviously. But it's an understanding of who to block and a willingness to do it.
How much offensive flexibility does that give you as a play caller when you have a running back who can trust in pass protection, also kind of give you some value snaps for first and second down?
Well, it's always things you can work around. That's why you don't just always play one running back. There's always multiple guys in the room. Usually carry 4 on the roster, typically 3 or 4, and each one of them brings a little bit different value.
In terms of strategy leading up to the draft, now, whether it's top first round pick, later first round pick, how much more difficult is it to plan for that flexibility you need later in the first round?
I don't think we look at it as difficult. You just you got to have your top 28 there that you're willing to take, just because that's where you pick. It's not that much different when you're picking. Where did we get Jamar 5th? And then we had the 36th pick or 37th. So it's the same conversations really. You're just picking a couple picks up, maybe earlier than a second round pick that we had a couple years ago. But again, I think Duke and everybody in that room does a really good job of having the conversations we need to have.
So in terms of strategy, it's kind of like almost preparing for like a second round pick to start with.
However you want to phrase it, it's the 28th pick. It's in the first round. It's 3 picks away from being a second round pick. So at the end, it really doesn't matter whether guys, other than the 5th year option, whether guys a first round pick or second round pick. It's can they come in and help you win games.
Back to tackle, what have you seen from Deontay and Hakeem as they've kind of developed, kind of in the background? Hakeem played at the end of last year.
Yeah, I mean, Hakeem's filled a number of roles for us over the years. So he's a smart player who's willing to do whatever it takes to help us win. That's key. Deontay's a guy that's continuing to try to make the most of his opportunities. We've used him in big tight end roles in the past as well. And so, again, just trying to find roles for these guys to get on the field so that when you do need them in a big moment, they've been on the field and they've played. And I think Frank does a great job of moving those guys around in practice to try to get them experience at different positions, because you just never know what position they're going to have to play in the game when you're a backup offensive lineman, which those guys have done off and on for us over the years.
And then Cody Ford, where do you see him fitting in?
He'll compete at right tackle, so his first spot for us will be right tackle, but he's got the flexibility to play guard as well. So it's good to have linemen that can come in and compete at different positions for you.
Do you lose sleep a couple days before the draft? Anticipation of everything?
Lose sleep? No. I think it's a fun process to be a part of. And then you get on the clock and you get to make that decision, and our scouts have put in so much hard work. It's probably different for them, because they've spent the entire year traveling, so much travel, so many conversations they've had with people, so much film that they've watched. And then, as coaches, we come in and supplement the process, but not to the scale that they've put in the time and effort. So it's a little bit different feeling probably than they have. And certainly it's fun to watch the work that they put in and how prepared they are for these moments. And then I've enjoyed watching them throughout this process. They do such a good job for us.
Here's what's interesting to me, right? Is for the longest time with Zach, it was okay. Like, I've talked to Jonah, everything's good. Jonah Williams, there should be no problem. Him going to right tackle, him finding right tackle should be no problems. Everything's okay. Now, his demeanor has changed. Because now it's, well, Cody Ford will compete for right tackle. But before, it was, well, Jonah Williams will be right tackle. And then he said in his OTAs interview how, I've talked to Jonah and I'm not going to speak on what happened. I'm not going to speak on our conversations. And it's like he went from, I'm confident that there'll be no problem with him at right tackle, down the slide to, I'm not talking about him. I'm not talking about what happened. I'm not talking about what he talked about. But at the end of the day, Cody Ford's now going to be competing for right tackle. Hakeem's going to be competing for right tackle. Everyone is. So I wonder if, and again, we saw Duke Tobin say in his last interview that he believes, Jonah Williams is a very valuable piece to the Bengals offense. But I wonder if there are more talks behind the scenes we don't know about yet that we're going to find out on Thursday. I'm kind of starting to get that drift. What they say, when you see smoke, wherever the smoke, there's fire. I'm seeing a lot of smoke. And Jonah might be where the smoke is coming from.
You had to reevaluate your feelings on smaller receivers. There's a ton of them in this draft. There's more and more of them now in college football. Is that, thinking about, is it the future of the league, or are we comfortable having smaller receivers? Is that a conversation you feel like you've had to rethink now as you're seeing more and more of them?
Who fits you? Who fits you? And maybe there's a huge receiver, maybe there's a small receiver that fits us this year, maybe there isn't. And so it's just, different positions can fluctuate from year to year on the different body types you're going to face that are looking at you in the draft. Again, we just want guys that we have a vision for that can play a role for us. And, sometimes the body type factors in, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we just want a good football player that can fill some jobs for us. And so that's as we assess the receivers, that's what you look at.
Do you see the league trending that way, where you just
trending? I have a hard small. You just saying?
Yeah, as far as having more smaller guys out there, kind of like you see in college.
Hard for me to say it's trending that direction.
Yeah.
There are some smaller body types in this draft. I have not thought back at last year's draft to see how this compares to that. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I don't have a great answer for you there.
I know we were joking around earlier about draft day, but what's it like in that room watching Duke and company do this thing for people who've never been inside of the draft?
Well, you're in there because they make us put a camera in there, so they get to see, It's, again, there's a lot of work that's been put in. It's a great moment when you get a chance to make this selection and call the young man on the phone and give him the news. And then again, for the reward of all the work that those guys have put in that sit in that room with us. So again, we've got a really good group that we trust, that they're good workers, they're smart scouts, and they put us in a really good position to be successful on the field on Sundays. And so for me, I like the experience of being with those guys and seeing them put in the work and that pay off when you get to make that selection.
What's it like calling that young man who gets his chance to play in the NFL?
It's tricky because you don't have the full picture until you see the video, typically, because sometimes it's there's not much communication on the phone, and it's usually because then you see the picture later and they're emotional or whatever it is. So I don't always fully know. Because again, there's a lot of prospects on the board, so you don't know in great detail all the personalities that you're dealing with on the phone. You might know their background, their character, but you don't know the face-to-face personality when you're picking a guy in the 4th round or 5th round necessarily. So I enjoy the process. I enjoy delivering the news, and then I really enjoy watching the videos afterwards of seeing how they took that call and piecing all that together.
Is the video different from what it sounds like in your ear?
Sometimes it just helps you piece together the puzzle, of how many people you never know. They have one person in the room. They're inside in their living room. They're outside on their patio. It's a game I can play, trying to picture where they were, and then you get a chance to see the video and put it all together.
Is there a more memorable call, like when you think back of all the calls you made on that stand?
No, No, I wouldn't say one that stands. I can remember a couple of them, but I wouldn't say the one that stands out in a memorable way, one way or the other.
Are there attributes that you find valuable in defensive tackles or defensive ends when you have first round grades on them? Are there certain attributes that they bring to the table of being able to play that position that you kind of find superior?
Just what fits our needs, and as you're asking that question, I'm thinking through a number of guys, and you can say that they have different attributes, and we like. Many of them have liked some in the past, and so I can't say there's one thing I'm going to tell you that this is exactly what we're looking for, because there's always different guys from year to year that fit different needs, that maybe play the same position, but for us they might play different positions. So I don't feel comfortable saying there's one trait that you're looking for. Mean on game day, I guess, is one, and find guys that can be mean and violent on game day.
I mean, along those lines, is there something in the commonalities? You guys have invested a lot of money in DJ and BJ over the last few years. Are there things that maybe they have in common that make them allow them to be successful, that are why you guys invested in them?
I think they're very rare because they hit so many of the top traits you'd be looking for. Smart, tough, and dependable are three things that stand out immediately. Both of them are really good against the run and can affect the passer as well. So again, I think we're very fortunate with those two guys as starting D tackles and what we've got, and it's a rare 1-2 mix that you got there with all the traits they bring to the table.
Kind of going back to that payoff you mentioned with like the draft selections, like when you pick a guy and then down the road you see him make a game-changing, season-changing play, like how do you kind of describe that feeling of seeing that happen after that moment of drafting, however many years earlier?
I think I separate the two, to be quite honest with you. Once they're in the building, they're just one of us, and it doesn't really matter where they got drafted, what round, undrafted free agent that we acquire. That all kind of goes out once we start getting in here and doing football stuff, and everybody's here for a reason. It doesn't matter what you got paid, where you got drafted. You're just here to help us win, and so I think I really differentiate between the two situations.
What are your thoughts on this year's class of tight ends in the draft?
I think it's a good class. It depends. They've all got different traits. They've all got different sizes. Depends on what you're looking for, and but I think top to bottom, it's a good class of tight ends.
What are you looking for?
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But again, we've got guys in that room that I really like. They're all here for a reason. From top to the perceived bottom, I guess you could say, it's a really good group of guys that I think is going to have a great opportunity to come in here and compete for roles. Even guys that were on our practice squad last year showed us really good things. They're going to have great opportunities to come in here and compete. And if we add to the mix, we add to the mix. But I don't feel like it's something that we have to do, because I think we put ourselves in a really good position with the guys that are in the room.
We talked about the pass blocking for running backs, but tight ends wise, just blocking in general, how valuable is that in this offense, and how important is that as a trait moving forward?
Pass blocking or run blocking?
Just blocking in general from that.
Yeah.
tight end spot.
Well, it's important in the run game. They can't run away from some of the responsibilities they're going to have. You try not to put them in the worst situations, but over a long season, they're going to be put in some tough situations, and sometimes a stalemate's a good thing. In pass protection, we don't we try to not put them in one-on-one situations often. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes you got to call play action on first and second down, and unless you're just want to manufacture all your play actions and never ask your tight end to do it, it's a difficult thing to do. Sometimes people do a really good job of getting you to check to a seven-man protection on third down because it's cover zero, and then they bail out of it, and now all of a sudden you got your tight end on a defensive end. Not what you want necessarily, but they've made it that way. And so I think you look for guys that are smart enough to understand the different roles they're going to have to play, and they're willing to do it all. They may be stronger in some areas than other, but again, I can go round and round on the traits we want from our tight ends, but ultimately that's why you got 3 or 4 guys in a room active on game day, and some of them maybe have different strengths than the other guys, and they can fit some different roles for you.
Go ahead. I was saying, you talked a lot about the cohesion that the coaching staff and the scouts have in terms of identifying physical traits that you want and the character makeup and all that. Is it tougher in terms of scope, whereas I would imagine the coaching staff is all in on, we want guys that help us win this year, or maybe the front office might have more of a wide angle lens?
I think it's good to have both viewpoints, and I think that's where our discussions are always really good in that room of people not being afraid to speak up and say what they think, short term and long term, because maybe you're only thinking short term and you hear something about a long term vision that really makes sense to you and helps you reframe your thought process between prospects, maybe. So I think that we always have the necessary dialogue that really helps us find the best player that fits the Bengals. And you always want a long-term vision on these guys. You want to bring them in here because you feel like it fits what we want to do long-term. But I think we have those discussions that make us think the right way as we evaluate these guys.
One of the great cliches is, we can't believe this guy was here. Is there a guy in the last couple of years where you actually couldn't believe he was there?
When you ask the question, the first thing that comes to mind is T and Logan, both of those guys. But again, that's how you graded them. So it doesn't mean everybody grades them that way. We think highly of them because we have high grades on them. Maybe nobody else did. Obviously, it's paid off for us, so we can pat ourselves on the back. But you always have higher grades than everybody else, seemingly, when you pick a player to a certain spot. Everybody else passed on that player. So, but those are two guys that stand out where you really didn't think they were going to be there, and then they were, and you were pretty excited about it.
Logan, I guess, too, late in the second round, I guess there were a couple of teams that needed backers.
Yeah, Logan's the guy I can remember watching 30 picks tick off the clock, with your fingers crossed. He's one, and there's certainly been other guys I'm sure that fit that description, but he's one I can remember from about pick, what was T, 33? From about pick 34 to whatever we drafted in Logan, you're just crossing your fingers and watching the clock.
When you're evaluating football IQ, that's a tough thing. You can't put every prospect down a reason work, you just have an opportunity to do that. What are the things that you trust the most? I mean, coaches aren't going to say I have a dummy. Who can you trust? How do you go about getting a solid evaluation on it?
Our scouts, you just trust the scouts. They've put in that work. The phone calls I make are typically to people that I really trust, maybe have worked with or have a close relationship with, because otherwise it's difficult. It's people always want to support their players and see their players do well, and so it can be tough to read through the lines. But our scouts, that's they put in that legwork, and so you trust their evaluations on those guys.
So how do they do that? How do they go about it? Just watching practices, watching guys' instincts, or that's a big.
Yeah, hard for me to know how they get the full picture on them. They're in the buildings, they're talking to their people, they're watching the practices. They've watched all these games of these guys, probably week to week as the games have happened. Whereas as coaches, we're watching them all, really in probably March 1st on, and we're watching all together. Whereas they've had a clearer picture for a longer time period. And we're really just trying to catch up. And then you do the Zooms with guys. You bring guys in on top 30 visits. You bring them in on your top 45 visits to the Combine. So there's a lot of different ways you try to gain information on these prospects.
You're talking about how you enjoyed kind of this last couple months in the process. Is it different when you look back at like 2019 or teams that have to draft a quarterback in the top 5? Is there more pressure in the room than there is like in a year like where you don't have that sort of hanging over you guys?
I haven't really felt that because we had the number 1 pick and we knew we were taking Joe Burrow and there was no pressure. It was we all felt really good about it. And so I haven't had to experience that. I can't speak for other teams. I'm glad we're not in that position. Obviously, that's a big piece of the puzzle, but I don't know that I really did a great job answering your question. But
you think it would be different if you had like the 2nd or 3rd pick at that spot?
And you need a quarterback?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been there, so that's a hypothetical that I can't really answer.
Did you expect to get picked in 2007?
I was hopeful. In the 7th round, I think, is where my antennas were up. John Gruden called me probably early 7th round and started recruiting me. And then I was like, that's not good. You start getting recruited. I know how that works, trust me. So, and then my head coach from Bill Callahan called me and started pushing me that way. And I was like, this isn't good. My father-in-law was at the Texans. They didn't pick me. They took Jared Zabransky over me. Not that I've forgotten that or anything. But no, looking back, I think I was an undrafted college free agent. And my son's always asked me all the time why I didn't get drafted. I say, hey, it's okay having a solid college career and being a solid college player is fine. That's acceptable. We got a lot of those guys upstairs in this building on the mezzanine and on A2 that were solid college football players, and now we coach and we scout. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think I probably got picked where I was supposed to get picked.
Did you ever see a scouting report at all? Did you ever see the exact
One at Miami. Someone forwarded to me one time. You know, it was good from a character standpoint. I was proud of that. So I think my mom would be proud of the scouting report. Yeah. Yeah.
Projects as a future coach.
Yeah. I got duped. You know, I got brought in to run the rookie free agent Tampa Bay. I didn't know it at the time, but I was the only guy that probably called the plays because it was the same offense I ran in college. So I could call the play in the huddle and get people lined up, then hand the ball off, and then that was about the extent of my needs there in Tampa. So they moved on from me.
I don't think we've got a chance to ask you this this offseason, but with all the pending stuff with Joe Mixon's legal situation, does that have any impact on his future with the team long term? How do you kind of view that as the case?
We'll just let that play out. Yeah.
How do you compare the coach's input? You know, like I know, you know, you've been with Miami and the Rams. How do you compare the coach's input here, you know, to those other places?
I think it's valid.
More or less.
Yeah, I don't want to compare to the other places. Here, I feel like our voices are valued, you know, and that's not saying anything about LA or Miami. That's just here. And again, I always try to fall back on. Sometimes I like to talk, but the scouts have put in a ton of work, and their opinion should be up there at the top. And again, we're there to supplement it, maybe to portray the vision I'd have on a player if we selected him. I haven't watched the same tape on all the prospects that these guys have, and so I always prefer to defer to what they have done the work on. But we do appreciate as coaches that our opinions are asked, and they want to hear it out, and then they want to, you know, Duke does a great job of managing all that and putting the prospects in order of how they would best help us.
Have you ever seen anyone actually stand on a table?
No, I don't think I have. I don't think I have. No.
Have you ever seen, what are those conversations like when you're like, wow, this is really, can you tell when some people really have true passionate feelings?
Sure.
You got in over these last couple of weeks, do you see a lot of that? Is there a little of that? Or is it...
I think you've had so many conversations about these guys that you know, if somebody really likes somebody else, that's fine, you know, and yeah, I can't give you a great story there of a moment. I mean, if I like a guy, I'm gonna say that I like a guy, you know.
If someone likes a prospect more than you, does it make you go back and watch them again?
Sure.
You miss something?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where those conversations are great, and that's why we've had them for weeks and months. There's always times you maybe have a low evaluation of a guy, and you hear somebody else that you respect has a really high evaluation of him, and it makes you want to go back and maybe look at it in a different lens. Maybe you were just having a bad day, and so yeah, plenty of times you go back and make sure that you're not misevaluating a player one way or the other. Am I too high on this player? Am I too low on this player?
So in the end, who are you going to pick?
Yeah, I don't know.
If you're in an organizational deadlock, I mean, it's 50-50 in big discussions leading up to the draft. How do you go through that tiebreaker process? I mean, is it just a natural progression, or is there somebody that says, okay, this is what we're doing?
I think, you know, there's a lot of really good voices in that room, and ultimately, you know, we've got some ones that I respect, and so those decisions usually play out in a really good way.
And it's done like, it's not done like draft day. Those discussions are like before the draft, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right, during the week. Yeah, during the week. I mean, it's really kind of nothing. I mean, there's not a lot of discussion during the thing.
Well, I think that's where the experience in our room is invaluable. You know, you look at how many drafts Mike's been a part of, how many drafts Duke's been a part of, just specifically here at Cincinnati. It's unheard of, you know, probably 20-something, I would guess. And so their experience really kicks in. They've seen every situation. They can anticipate every point that's going to come up when you're comparing prospects. They can kind of foreshadow some of the conversations that we're probably going to be having when we're on the clock, so they have them now. And so that's where the experience really kicks in from the people in the room. That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. And that's where, you know, I'm inexperienced in that way. You know, I'm just in my 5th year here compared to some people that we have the luxury of leaning on. And so I think that stuff's invaluable, and we appreciate that, and it helps us lead to really good selections when we're on the clock.
Which I always find funny because, like, you know, so many scouts, so many videos on YouTube and analysts are like, oh, this team's picking this player. This team's picking this player. That's why I don't ever say they're definitely picking one player. I give a list of players that they potentially pick depending on who's available. Because at the end of the day, even Cincinnati right now does not know who they're going to pick. You know, Duke Tobin said many times, and Zach Taylor says it here. You know, there are 28 players, or sorry, 27 players who are going to be picked before Cincinnati's pick. Cincinnati has a draft board. I promise you, those 27 players, are, most of them at least, are on Cincinnati's draft board. And if they're available at pick 28, a lot of those players will probably be selected. So you got to think, at pick 28, they might have 15 names written down, right? And let's say players start dropping. Crazy things happen. The Raiders take a stupid pick like always, right? You know, certain things start happening. News start coming out. Okay, well, they might pick somebody, you know, who we right now are saying, oh, this guy's a pick 18, pick 17, pick 16. They might get him at pick 28, and we just don't know about it right now because things haven't happened yet. So, guys, I will be live on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, talking about the draft, breaking down the draft. We'll be doing a live stream on the draft, so make sure you go ahead and check out the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.